Well, the whole line to, I guess about here. Where is this? Laon is fortified for the French side. Okay. For the Germans, I think it stops short of that. I think up here probably. I'm fumbling around and I can't really see. Up here, though, things are much more sporadic. There may be a couple of French fortifications, say in here, that have the entrenchments have held and have finished being constructed. They're not going to provide a lot of help. Of course, everywhere along the line I've put new construction markers because I want to make sure, hey, if I happen to be here, I want them to be defensible. We also got 30 new points of German supplies, which I've thrown mainly into the first and, I don't know who that is, Stearns. I don't know whose command that is. With an intention to strike in this direction. The second and third have also received some, but this is where we're going to be fighting for the most part, just where we were before, because that's where the Allied lines or the Entente lines are the weakest, and they're not entrenched as deeply, so it's also not great terrain. So that's where I hope to make my gains, and you know, if I can push them back behind the ice, near Paris, hey. At least I win the Schlieffen plan, I think, if I can get real close to Paris by this kind of stratagem, as opposed to what the Germans historically did, which was the punch through. Now, I've gotten pretty far already. I probably haven't been playing my defense very well in terms of spreading out the units as well as I could have from the early parts. Down here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to attack. The odds aren't going to be as good. I've got a very limited amount of supplies to launch attacks, and I just want to keep grinding with the same units, essentially. Got some replacements, actually 2 new headquarters, totally useless to me. They're just, you know, they don't come with supplies, and I don't really need a lot of coverage of headquarters. I could probably get one somewhere down along here, fill this in a little bit more. That's a little weak. And I could probably use something to replace here where the 7th Army has moved south in order, you know, to at least provide some sort of support to an attack. One of the problems is there's just nowhere. I've got to slog into this terrible terrain in order to make attacks that are fully supplied. And once you do that, then you can't keep pumping supplies in. So this is pretty much a hopeless front in terms of advancing for the Germans. And if the French push any further in, it'll become hopeless for them too. It is really a barrier that can't be surmounted. Some more siege artillery up here and some more replacement points, and that's about it. See if October holds out and is it all useful. I do not feel like the Germans have enough supplies to continue through 7 turns of October with only 30 supplies. On the other hand, I don't know if the French, who are going to get 15 additional, are going to be in any better shape. The BEF's not in terrible shape. They've got 10. Hey, that's probably better than what most of the French armies are going to be holding up with up here to try to hold off. But they're not getting any replacements. The French are getting 15, which, you know, really isn't sufficient because you pay more supplies for each defending unit. Of course, you're attacking with more units, but the defensive units have this force multiplier of ×3 on them. And the Germans spent nearly a good share of their supplies, let's put it that way. I think about 20 points of those 30 they just got to punch into here. And doing a mobile attack against wherever that fort was. This is still French, I think. What's up with that? I can't completely abandon this space. They punched into the fort, and then from there they went down to here, so this must be German as well. Yeah, indeed, that is a weak little German unit. There's actually some opportunity here with how weak the German line is. for a possible counterattack to try to retake this hex. I don't know how valuable that is. I like this line if I could hold the river. But now without the river, falling back from the river, this space becomes less and less important, but I might be able to get off a good shot on them. It's also draining the French resources, though, too. They're down to, I don't know, like 4 supply points left after this round. They lost an artillery piece, heavy demoralization cost to that. They've got a... It's a hard call, because do you want them in the line where they'll actually do some good and provide some defensive benefit, but there's a good chance that you have to retreat and therefore they're captured? Or do you want to try to save them? They're not terribly valuable on attack except against the fortresses, from what I can see. But in 1915, massed artillery, combining siege and regular artillery, can negate a trench. So I may want to try to preserve my guns through this period. Anyway, you can see the Germans pretty much achieved what their objectives were in terms of pushing forward another hex. They're getting closer and closer to Paris here. But, you know, I mean, they're expending everything on this one salient. And it's not a fast advance. It's going to stop. You know, this is not going to be the war's over here type of situation, I think, no matter what. Well, I was mistaken. The British got 5 points of supplies as well. I made an attempt here to shorten my lines, trim it up a little bit. I pulled out of Peronne here, but also I tried to attack here, whatever this is, Noyon, and that did not go well for the Allied forces. They lost a couple more strength points than they caused in casualties, and didn't get the space. The space would have been valuable because it would have trimmed their line a little bit. Now they've got these bulges that are kind of at risk. There's a good chance that this is going to be the next hex to go, especially with Peronne being abandoned. And this was a successful entrenchment, but I can't just leave a unit there, and I couldn't commit enough to hold it in place. I just don't have the troops. I'm going to decrease some of the forts over here again and try to pull some of those forces, and maybe even back here, I'm not sure. Try to get some additional replacements into play next turn. Well, the Germans pretty much shot their wad here. 2 mobile column attacks and then a follow-up attack. They pushed in this far. That's quite a distance, further than you'd expect. And it's really turning the flank where they, what is this? The Eisne is, or perhaps the Oise, I don't know, is really being driven to being vulnerable. We could very easily turn around here and start curling behind their threat of a push down as far as the Marne, which, you know, is about what you'd want historically, but without having crossed the Somme already in such force. I did lay off an attack here. I could have made one there where the numbers were in my favor, but there's a fortress, there's trenches. It just doesn't seem worth it. I had a lot of forces built up there. I don't have the supplies to make that attack, but I still would have had a numerical superiority on the attack, something like 42 to 33 total or something along those lines. Good chance that I wouldn't destroy it, though. The fortress means there would have to be 11 losses to cause a retreat effect, so, and the trench and whatever. Which means I'd be facing the whole 33. The advantage with these attacks, at least, well, one of the column attacks failed. It slammed into a wall of French units, and that's why I had to hit again and then set up another attack. And that drained me. I mean, I am out of German ammo. Of course, I'm also, I mean, not entirely. I'm shifting some up. What is it? The 6th Army here started throwing some forward by rail. I've got tons and tons of troops, though. The strength of troops is tremendous. These are, you know, full divisions coming from the south heading up to reinforce and continue this attack. I think I can continue the attack even without ammunition, given that the French don't terribly have much themselves. So it kind of evens the odds. But I don't want to push it up against fortified positions when I don't have to. I think I can roll this flank in both directions, to tell you the truth, if the Allies don't pull away. And I think they're going to. A significant increase in forces. Some additional British units plus some replacements that I brought back on the line allow the English to take the northern frontier here. Maybe not the optimal place for them. Those are strong units, and this seems to be likely to be a quiet front, especially with them there. I'd kind of rather be taking some losses with them, but I've shifted them up to the north with kind of this thought of, oh yeah, I want to have these sectors that I'm supposed to enforce. But I could have a French sector, a British sector, and then a French sector, as was pretty much historically, although I think the Belgians were mixed in there too. For the most part, the French have a pretty solid line at this point, from here through here. But there's some significant weaknesses. This one not so much, I think. It's not too bad. But there's some significant weakness right here. English cav trying to hold here, French here. I don't know how well the lace line is going to actually hold up there. It looks to me like we may be falling back into the Marne region if we're not careful. And, you know, it's not going to be the kind of bulge that historically happened, because the Germans have pushed so far forward, but it's not an unimpressive breakthrough that seems to be happening here. And if I can cut the line here and roll it up a little deeper, it'll be ugly. But, again, it's not getting me to Paris to be directed this way. So if this line holds, which it looks pretty solid, to be honest. I mean, I can try chiseling at these at the edges here. I've got a lot of forces there, and that's kind of what I wanted to do, but there are a lot of troops there now. Well, after another big swap of headquarters out and back in, I have the 5th up here now. Pushed some more forward, some more points forward. Oh, I forgot about this artillery. I don't know what to do with the siege artillery. It's not terribly useful to me right now, but I might as well move it, right? I could have put it on the rail, but I'm not planning on using it anytime soon. Anyway, the Germans did a mobile attack actually across the river here, and that was successful, and that allowed them to launch an attack into here. That was a completely unsupported attack in terms of supply points. The French actually withdrew their cav and left one poor unit to die there. It looked hopeless. I'm getting used to the system enough to see you don't want to be here. You don't want to be in this battle, period. And the French line is feeling that way overall. We're going to have to give away a lot of ground, falling back here to the Marne, really, to try and find some kind of place where we can defend ourselves. We've got a line here that I'm not terribly dissatisfied with. I like what's going on here, but we did get a break here. The Germans can still punch their way through, but they needed to supply a huge army there. That was, you know, one of these 10 supply points, 80-point armies smacking into it, and it used up pretty much whatever the Germans have. They still have some floating around. The 4th Army, wherever it is, kicking down here, has some. I can funnel some of that through and continue some offensives, but you know, with these couple of pieces, these were just one or two units, under 10 strength points total, well under 10 actually. 5 I think was the most we saw. It's pretty easy to brush something like that aside in this system when you have the massive amounts of force that I've managed to assemble for the drive on Paris. I've just pretty much stripped everything from here, which is fine because the French had stripped everything too. Right now, the armies are just fighting here. And finishing up this 3rd turn of October, we see the French pushing, you know, positioning themselves as much as they can, to try and take advantage, you know, well, to try to form some kind of defensive line. So far, I really do like the defense I've got here in the north. I don't want to fall back there. I don't think there's good terrain coming anywhere soon. But it does mean that I've got this kind of weak spot here where the bulge is forming. That, you know, the Germans are able... I could probably cut a hex here, this hinge hex, if I pulled back a space. Of course, I don't want to do that because I have entrenchments across here in progress. Speaking of the entrenchments, I've been looking at the Hindenburg line rolls, and they don't seem to reflect reality. The Hindenburg line was formed behind the German lines as a fallback location. In order to build it in this game, you have to have a working trench. And looking more and more at how the trenches exist after 1915, those trenches couldn't have existed to build the Hindenburg line. I don't know quite how to handle that, because they have to be in an enemy zone of control. And basically, this was well behind German lines that the Hindenburg line was formed. I'm going to look to see if that's updated in some more recent rolls, because it doesn't work the way it is. No matter what, I'll probably have to fudge it to give it a realistic, allowing the Germans to use the Hindenburg line to just build it, even if there isn't an existing trench, which in a sense is actually more accurate. It was not built as normal trenches and then upgraded. It was built as a fortified line to fall back to. Anyway, things look kind of grim for the French, but they looked kind of grim historically too, and I don't feel like, you know, I'm seeing something that's unbelievable happening here. It developed in a different way than historically, but that's more probably due to my style of play, wanting to form this solid line early than anything else.